Okay, good morning. So I've never done this before, so please do stop me, tell me if you can't hear me properly, etc. You can either chat or you can actually just activate your talk button and also reply if you would like to say something. I think there might be another couple of people joining us at some stage. They might also just be struggling with the system. It's a bit new. Okay, so I will just run through the whole class exercise and how I did it. It will probably differ from how you did it. Just stop me, ask me questions if you would like to know it. If your approach was correct, there is always more than one approach. It's more of, is the way you did it still logical and follows the correct idea within the scope of what I gave you. Okay. Okay, so for all of them, I just sort of broke it down into every bullet point. So every bullet point that was given on the list, and then specifically asking what is the classes that we will use and what is the relationship. So if we look at the first one, we have municipality, municipal and provincial boundaries of South Africa. That was the first sentence. So if we want to find out now what is our classes and what is the relationship. Can I just ask, can you hear me? Just give me a thumbs up or a yes or something. Oh, cool. Thanks. Okay, so what is our clauses? Okay, so this is what I have for the first sentence. Okay, so our clauses is municipality and province. And I just created an association, meaning that it's not inheritance or aggregation or anything like that. It just means that the municipality and a province has somewhat type of association with each other. So you could have also done it with an aggregation, saying that multiple municipalities creates a province. And then I know in previous times people would also add South Africa here as a separate one, which provinces aggregated gives you South Africa, which is correct. I would not necessarily use South Africa as a class, but rather country, as the country is the highest class and not South Africa. Okay, another thing I wanted to say here is that in general people try to, with these modeling, they try to create this hierarchy so that South Africa is your top, and then everything needs to be connected to South Africa in some way. You do not need to do that. Things can be disconnected. It does not need to be connected to everything. And you also do not need to have this hierarchy. Okay, so the next bullet, we say that cadastral boundaries of South Africa includes farms, farm portions, proclaimed towns, and land parcels. So again, if we break this down into our classes, we can see that our cadastral boundaries is a class, farms, farm portions, proclaimed town boundaries, and land parcels. So we get something like this. And I decided on an aggregation relationship. So your result would look like this. So your farms, farm portions, proclaimed towns, and land parcels all put together gives you the cadastre of South Africa. Would you say that it can be composition? I would not really do that, as your cadastre can still exist without, for example, a farm. You could still have a cadastre. So aggregation is a bit better suited for the specific purpose. Does it make sense? Okay. Okay, the other thing that this would remind you of probably is inheritance. But it is not really inheritance because cadastre is not your super type, and your type of cadastre is not farm portion or proclaimed land, etc. It's not really a type and subtype relationship. Okay. Okay. So then we are at the third bullet. Each cadastral boundary has a unique identifier. So what is our clause? What is our relationship? So this one does not necessarily have a relationship. It only affects a specific clause. So our answer would be something in this direction. So you have your clause, which is your cadastre, and the relationship would be none in this case. But what we would do is add this specific attribute, a public attribute that has our ID, and it is an integer. So that is what we would do now. Okay, so if we go to the next bullet, farm boundaries are the original surveyed boundaries, which could subsequently be divided into one or more farm portions. So what is our clauses? What is our relationship for these ones? Our clauses would be farms and farm portions. And what do you think the relationship would be? I decided on composition. So farm portions creates a farm. So we have various farm portions that compose a farm, and we have these multiplicities that tells us a farm has one or many farm portions, but a farm portion belongs to one farm. I didn't add role names, but you could have the role names of is composed of farm portion belongs to farm. So you could add that to this diagram as well. Okay. You could also go with aggregation in this case. It would not be incorrect. Okay, then we say a farm portion could be subdivided further into smaller parts. So what is our clauses that is affected here? Only farm portions. So this is where we get our reflexive association. We have our farm portions, and our relationship is a directed association, which is reflected. So farm portion gets subdivided into farm portions. So one farm portion can be subdivided into many farm portions. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. Okay, so the next one, proclaim town boundaries and their respective land parcels. Okay, so what is our clauses? What is our relationship? For this one again, okay, we have some extra people now. You guys can just press the talk button if you would like to give a comment or ask a question. So just interrupt me as you need to. Okay, so proclaim town boundaries and their respective land parcels. So what is our clauses? We can see the proclaimed town boundaries and the land parcels. What is our relationship between these two? An association. So we say proclaimed towns has one-to-many land parcels, and a land parcel has one proclaimed town. So a land parcel in our case, our assumption is that a land parcel can only belong to one proclaimed town. So you could also have that a land parcel, because of management or whatever decisions, we could say that the land parcel can be within two towns, that is maybe on the border and one part of it falls within a different town. But in our case, our assumption is that the land parcel can only be in one town. Okay, a town is proclaimed. Okay, I see Some people are still downloading the app. We'll just run through the rest, and then maybe I'll show you also still the enterprise architect and how that works with the specific model. Maybe that will, then we can also run through how to put all these specific things together in the end. Would that be fine? Okay. A town is proclaimed on an original farm boundary or farm portion. So our clauses and what is the relationship again? Okay, we have a lot of new people. Should we just start from the beginning and quickly go through what we have already looked at? I'll just wait a sec and see if you think we should just quickly run through the other slides again. Okay. Okay. Let's do this then. We'll continue for now and then just recap a bit later. Okay, so we are at a town is proclaimed on an original farm boundary or farm portion. So what is our clauses? A proclaimed town, a farm, or a farm portion. So for this one, I actually created two new clauses. So we already had a farm and a farm portion, but that farm and farm portion refer to the current situation. So what is the current structure? What is the farm? But this now, the original farm refers to what was it back in 1900 whatever. So what was it way back then? So that's, you have your historic data and then the new data. So the ones that speak about farm would be your present data, and the original farm information would be your historic information. So we have our claimed town, we have the original farm portions, and when you connect this with an aggregation, you get a proclaimed town. Okay. Then the next one is about names, the registered name and the colloquial name. So what do we do there? We could now, does this create new clauses, or do you just add your attributes? So I know in previous examples that I've seen from students, they would create clauses similar to the previous example, where you have your registered name and your colloquial name, but what I did was just add some attributes. So I have the proclaimed town clause. I added the registered name as a char, which means it's a string value, so alphanumeric characters. And then I added a colloquial name variable as well. So these two attributes then described the proclaimed town. Okay, a property is a farm portion, a land parcel with all its moving parts. So previously we said the farm portion, the land parcel, and the proclaimed town forms part of the cadastre. So we previously had this diagram. So now we still use all these elements, or at least most of them, and we say now that a property is a farm portion, or a land parcel. We did not include a proclaimed town because a town is larger than a specific property. It's usually multiple properties. So in this case, we use inheritance because a property is your supertype, and then your subtypes would be a type of property can be a farm, a type of property can be a farm portion, or a type of property can be your land parcel. So that's why we have the supertype and the subtypes in this case. Okay, now we say that, so there's a question, Won't the property be associated with a town? Yes. Just want to see yeah. Okay, so that part is also actually still coming, I think. Where am I now? Okay. So we previously did say that a land parcel and a town was connected. So now the question, so let me just go to the bigger one. So this is just the entire model. So we have the proclaimed towns, which has an association with land parcels, and all these are properties. Now the question is, should a property have an association with a town? So as you can see in this specific instance, we'll get to this part still, but the property has an association with a municipality. So why was it done in this specific way? Was from the text. So we'll get to that specific statement still, but it's not wrong to say that your property should be associated with a town. It's just from this specific text, it did not specify anything about the property and the town. Does that answer your question? Okay, so we were on this one. Okay, so we say municipal boundaries do not align with the property boundaries. Thus, a property could lie in one or more municipalities. However, the owner will only pay tax in one municipality. So again, we look at what is our classes and what is our relationships. So our classes would be our municipalities and our properties. So this is what we just spoke about. We have the municipality that has one-to-many properties. And then the property belongs to one-to-many municipalities. So we say one-to-many municipalities because we read in this sentence that it says due to this misalignment, your specific farm could be in 3 different municipalities. So you could have also limited by creating an assumption that said property can only be in 2 municipalities. Then this cardinality could be 1 to 2. So this would just be part of your assumption. My assumption would be that it can be in multiples. So I did not limit that to a specific number. Okay. Okay, you can see I did not add this part about the tax yet. That will come in the next one. So we say that a combination of the history of the property sales transactions, the land use, the area of the property, and all those things are used to calculate the value of the property for tax purposes. So what we did here, we use property information, which is a new clause, and then land use, which is a new clause. And all these 3 things were now associated with each other. So the result looks something like this. So you still have your property, which has one property information section relating to it, and there is a specific land use relating to a specific property. So your property information would have the history, which would be a string value. So the string would give a little statement about Jan that used to own this land, and then he sold it to Piet, and then Chris bought it from him, etc. The land use is the integer in this case. The reason for this would be in your land use clause, you would list different types of land uses. For example, 1 would be associated with residential, 2 would be associated with industrial, 3 with a nature reserve, etc. So you don't want to always write this out. So you rather just refer to the integer, the value, for example, 1, that would say, okay, this is residential, this property is residential. Then we have two derived attributes. One is the area, because as soon as you have the geometry, you can get the area from that. Then the next one is the tax. So we say that from the history, the land use, the area, all this information, we can get the tax. Okay, so I left one thing out here, I see now. That would be the previous statement we have on our owner can only pay tax in one municipality. So how would you represent that? I don't think I can write this. Okay, there's a comment here. Okay, it says, can one just add the property info as members of the property clause? Yes, you could do that. So by combining these two, and then you have the land use that is associated with that one. With an attribute as municipality tax. Yes, that is fine as well. The one thing that I wanted to just add here as well is something you would call a constraint. So I will draw a little diagram now about combining these two, but you can add a constraint that tells us an owner can only pay tax in one. So we can say, have a little constraint connected to a property. Let's put it there. That tells us you can only pay tax in one. Then the other comment here was now to combine these two. So we could move all this information up there as well, so that this just forms part of the attributes of the property. And then land use would still be separate. So what I meant previously with land use was something like this. You would have one would be two industrial, three nature, etc. So this is what we call a code list. So you have a bunch of predefined values, and you do not necessarily need to type out residential every time, because when you talk about land use clause 1, you already know that you're speaking about residential. So that is what the code list looks like. Okay, so I've taken all the different pieces, so we've broken it up into smaller parts, and then you would just connect this. You won't have 4 property clauses. All the different property clauses that I showed you are all connected to the same property clause. So in the end, your model would look something like this. So you have your cadastral at the top, which has your farms, farm portions, proclaimed towns, land parcels, etc. And here at the bottom, we have this last bar that we created now with the first bar, municipality and provinces here on this side. So in the beginning, I mentioned that you don't need to create this hierarchy system. I know some of you would add South Africa. You do not necessarily need to add South Africa. And actually, South Africa would be wrong. If you want to connect province to something, it would actually be country, not South Africa, because South Africa is a specific instance of a country. It is not a clause. Okay, so I will upload the PDF of this diagram that I drew, as well as the Enterprise Architect file for you on ClickUp, so that you can actually play around with Enterprise Architect as well before the assignment. Then another thing that I want to show you is how would I go about marking this. So from the instructions, okay, but just please note that this will vary. It's just to give you an idea. In general, I would go about similar to this. But from the instructions, we saw that we have class inheritance. you need to have a composition or aggregation, and association labels, role names, cardinalities, and at least one of the following. Okay, but then also usually we give some marks for the general impression of your model. Was the model done neatly? Do the lines cross each other when it's not actually needed? Is your spelling and things like that all proper, etc.? Does it generally make sense? Is the model well thought out? Can I see that you actually put in thought into how this thing is structured, etc.? So if we look at class inheritance, if I wanted to mark this now, I would go back to your model. I would see, okay, class inheritance. This is the property, farms, farm portions, and land parcels, the specific part. I would see, okay, it makes sense because it is a type and subtype situation. So you would get your mark for that. Then composition, aggregation, same thing. Association labels. Was the labels that you used correct? Could you, what association labels? So I have subdivided. If you say it here, I mean, I can't think of a very bad example, but if you wrote cadastral here, it would be incorrect. So then you would lose your marks for that. So that you select a word that is appropriate for a specific situation, then you would get your mark for that as well. So again, cardinalities, does your cardinalities make sense? So just a dumb example I thought of earlier, with this property municipalities, if you say a municipality has one-to-one properties, that means that your entire municipality is consistent only of one property. That would be incorrect. So you would not get your marks for that. So does it make sense the way you selected your cardinalities? Okay, reflexive association, derived attributes, that's such an easy thing to get marks for, that you, most of the times the students forget to add this little slash and you do not get your marks for that. Did you put attributes where you needed to put attributes, for example? That's also something that's important. If you use the whole property inheritance, if you have property name, did you have farm name, etc. as well? So does these things connect to each other as they should? Okay, so that is what I need to say about the marking of the model. Do you have any questions on that? You can take a second for that. Will you get marked for neatness in a test? I won't necessarily say no or yes. If in a test, if it looks okay, then I won't mark you down. But I have had models that are really just ugly. There's so many scratches, things that were scratched out, and lines that are just drawn everywhere. If it's really just a mess, you will probably lose marks because it does not seem neat or well thought out. You can always have a model on which you start and then just draw it neatly on the next page. Because if it's a lot of things that were scratched out, etc., I will tend to not like it. There's a little bit of bias in the general impression, because if it's difficult for me to read and understand, you will probably get penalized for that. That's why the general mark usually do not count that much as well. I'm just getting Enterprise Architect to start, and then I can show you that a little bit. Okay, how much does a model generally count? Okay, so last year in the semester test, there was, I think, I gave them a scenario, and then I asked them to tell me what would be the composite relationship, what would be the aggregation relationship, etc. So that counted like 4 marks, I think, out of 60. Then in the exam, there was that I needed to draw a model, and that probably counted 7 to 10 marks out of the 120 marks. So it does not count that much, but it is generally easy marks to get, especially with the 3 marks, the general impression marks. If I can give you 2 extra marks there to get you to a distinction or a pass, I would generally give you those marks. The main thing why I don't test this too much is because of the assignment, because the assignment already counts quite a bulk of the semester marks, so that's why we don't focus so much on it during the test and the exams. Okay, Enterprise Architect is starting up, so then I'll just show you. Has any of you installed it yet and tried to work with it? Did you manage? Can you just give me an indication if you can see my screen? Can you see the Enterprise Architect startups page? Okay, thank you. Sorry, I just want to take it. Okay, so when you start Enterprise Architect, you will generally be greeted by this screen. Okay, I've opened the model that I will also upload to click up for you. So you have on the side, you have the project browser with your model. You'll see model, class model. And when you open that, you'll see all the different classes also listed along the side. And this will open the model for you. Okay, so if you would like to add a specific class, you'll see on the little side there's a toolbox. You just drag and drop the class. And you can give this a test. I'm just going to call this test. And I've added a class called test. To connect it, you'll see the little arrow on the side here. You just click on the arrow and drag it to the class you would like to connect it to. As soon as you release the click button, your right click, it will bring up the menu of different relationships. So we can say that this is a directed association, for example. Okay, so now we say the class is associated with cadastral. How you would go about adding different attributes, if you right click on it, you would see properties, features and properties. Under that you will find attributes. Okay, so for the attributes, we can just say name. Then you select the type. So name is a char because it's a string. You say add. So I did something wrong, just name, char, and to say save. And it added it. You can see that it's locked at the moment because I didn't set the private or public specification. So I'm just going to add next one price, which would be a float, and I will change that to a public. And if I say save, okay, also did something wrong again here, but this will also show you. So you could see that it actually overwrote name with price when I said save. So what you need to do after every single one is to say new again. So now I can say name is a char. I can keep it as private, and I say save. And now I have 2 attributes. As soon as I say close, the attributes are now listed under test. You can right click again on it, and it will bring up all these. So you can now change the name if you want. Test hello. So it is quite nice because you can actually use this application to create code for you as well. So it's not something you need to do, but it has the option at least. And you can also now go to, if you double click on the relationship, it will take you to the properties. There you can now add roles. So I can say the role is has, and it is, the multiplicity is 0 to 1, and I say add, and it added the role name as well as the multiplicities for me. Okay, so it's quite nice to use. You can see at the top here, you can export the diagrams, and save it as an image, etc. It also has the snap to grid function. The diagram layout doesn't work so well because I think my diagram is quite well laid out, but as soon as I press this, this happens, which is not so nice. So that is what Enterprise Architect generally looks like. If you would like to now start a new project, let's just call it test again. Okay, it will bring up this menu for you. What do you select? You select class diagram because that's what we would create for this. You say OK. And then again under the project browser, it will bring up the model for you. And this is generally what it would look like. So you have your system with your frameworks, etc. So if you click there, it will give you this little window where you can now start and either just edit these ones or delete all of them and start over. Okay. I'm just going to add, or you can add a new diagram, which is a class diagram, and it's empty now. So you can just add. Okay, so that's just a little overview of what this looks like, of what the model, the Enterprise Architect generally looks like. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask about this? Is there any questions? If there's no questions, then we'll end for today. If you can just give me some kind of indication if this worked for you, that you've was it clear? Can you follow me on this way of presenting the class for you? Because if so, if we don't have class tomorrow, I might continue again using the Collaborate to present the first part of the standards so that we don't miss out on that as well, so that you also have enough time to complete that assignment. So I'll just wait for some responses. Okay. Okay, so the feedback seems good. Sorry for the difficulty in accessing this today. I've never used this before, so it was also a bit of a learning curve for me. So I will upload the notes now as well as the video as soon as I can. So then you can have a look at it. Please let me know if you have any questions. I will also upload information about tomorrow then. We'll start again with this if we don't have class tomorrow. I've also been thinking of we could use this as a way of chat before exam, before the semester test and exam if you guys have questions, because then you can, like the day also before, ask any questions if you have that. I don't know if that would be helpful to you. Okay. Okay, great. Nice to chat to you guys. Have a good day. See you hopefully soon.